Okay, so Apple just completed its October event at which it revealed the first major redesign to the MacBook Air since 2010. So yeah, it's a pretty big day. Okay, so if you were watching the event either online or in person, or you were following people on a live blog or a live tweet, then you probably know a good amount about the features of the new MacBook Air. But in this video, I want to talk more about the pricing of the MacBook Air and who should buy it. So we're going to dive right in on Apple's website, which was literally updated like a minute before I started filming this video. Okay, so here we are on Apple's website, and as you can see, the new MacBook Airs slot in at $1199 and $1399. So this is a bit of an odd pricing strategy for Apple because traditionally the MacBook Air for the last sort of 5 or 6 years has been definitely on the budget side of Apple's lineup, but clearly you can see with a starting price of $1199, we are bumped up $200 over the previous MacBook Air starting price. Now, one thing to note is that old MacBook Air is still on here with the exact same price. This is not something that I really like. This is basically a 2015 laptop, and it had no updates, so they really should have dropped the price on this and then slotted this price in above it. So as it stands across all models, you're going to be getting dual-core i5s, and you're going to get 8 gigs of LPDDR3 RAM. So this isn't surprising. LPDDR3 RAM stuck around on the 2018 MacBook Pro 13-inch, so now we're seeing that continue on the new MacBook Air, though I do wish it was DDR4. Now granted, it does make sense that Apple would want to stick with dual-core processors for the MacBook Air because they want to save the quad-core processors for the Touch Bar 13-inch MacBook Pros. However, one thing that is very interesting is the non-Touch Bar MacBook Pro has not been changed. It still has dual-core 7th generation Core i5s. So the question remains, what are the differences between the new MacBook Air and the non-Touch Bar MacBook Pro? So let's hop into Apple's Compare and we can see what the differences are. So as you can see here, the 13-inch MacBook Pro is $100 more expensive than the brand new MacBook Air. But there are some pretty significant differences. So as you can see, the MacBook Air brings TouchID to the platform. This is maybe not important for some people, but it could be a decision factor. You're also going to be getting 8th generation dual-core processors with the MacBook Air, whereas the Pro is still stuck on 7th gen processors from last year. Now, if we scroll down to the specifications area, you'll notice that the tiers are very similar. They're both going to start with a dual-core i5. They're both going to start with 8 gigabytes of DDR3 memory. They're both going to start with 128 gigabyte SSDs, and they're both going to have Intel integrated graphics. So the MacBook Air is also going to give you 13 hours of battery instead of 10. It's going to give you a very similar screen with the same resolution. There really are fewer and fewer reasons to pick the MacBook Pro non-Touch Bar over this MacBook Air, so I would not be surprised if that MacBook Pro gets discontinued very soon, because as you may have noticed, it did not receive any updates in July with the rest of the MacBook Pros, so to me that signals that that is going to be a short-lived product. Now of course that's all talking about the base configuration of the MacBook Air, but what options can we apply? So now we're back here on Apple's website, and as you can see, the two models have a price difference of $200. So for that extra $200, all you really get is 256 gigabytes of solid state instead of 128. There's no other difference. Now, in my mind, that's a bit steep. I think that should also come with a processor bump at least. $200 just for extra storage is a bit steep, so I would say stick with the base model for most people. But in the interest of seeing how far we can take this thing, let's take that top model and spec it all the way up. Alright, so what we can do is put in 16 gigabytes of memory, and we can add a 1.5 terabyte SSD. That's a pretty pricey option at $1,000. One thing that you'll notice is there is no option to add a Core i7 to this machine. This is a little bit surprising, and in my mind, this is really the only place where the non-Touch Bar 13-inch MacBook Pro makes any sense, because you can put a Core i7 on that machine. I don't know if you would really necessarily want to, but you can do that. So spec'd all the way out, the MacBook Air costs $2,600, and for that money, you're still only getting a dual-core i5. So yeah, $2,600 for this MacBook Air is definitely too steep. That is just ridiculous. For $2,600, you should be buying yourself a MacBook Pro 15-inch, which is going to give you 6 cores, 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, you're going to get so much better value out of a 15-inch MacBook Pro than you are out of this. Or even if you take a 13-inch quad-core MacBook Pro, that's going to give you much better value than if you spec out this MacBook Air. So realistically, I think for most people, you're not really going to want to deviate from those two storage tiers. Aside maybe from adding 16 gigs of RAM, I really wouldn't touch it. Now, on the other hand, you could say, well, Luke, you're putting the 1.5 terabyte SSD. Let's just forget about that. What if we want 512, which is a pretty good storage tier? So for 512 plus the 16 gigs of RAM, you're still coming in at $1,800. So for that money, I really would recommend putting it into a 13-inch MacBook Pro that's going to get you quad cores. Okay, so that'll do it for today's quick overview of the pricing and positioning of the new 2018 MacBook Air. Let me know what you think about this device, and if you are going to buy one, what tier are you going to do? What upgrades are you going to give to it? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.